Yeah, so I guess we're live and good morning, everybody. This is the Senate Agricultural Committee on Friday, the 22nd, maybe, or first. I don't know. Lose track of the days here. But we're going to be talking this morning with our congressional delegation people. We have Tom Berry with us, Erica Campbell. I don't know if Ryan's on yet or not. Andrew, are you representing one of the groups, or are you on to listen?
Yes, I am with Senator Leahy's office. Good morning.
Yeah. Andrew is my DC colleague. He's the one that gets the stuff done.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have somebody that'll get the stuff done, right? But I'd like to have the committee introduce themselves so that we'll all know each other. We do have one new member on the Senate Ed Committee. So, Mr. Vice Chairman, would you like to start?
Be happy to. Good morning, everybody. Chris Pearson from the Chittenden District. Glad to have you here.
Hi, all. I'm Anthony Pauline of Washington County.
Ryan Collmore representing the Rutland District. Welcome.
And we also have Corey Parent from St. Albans, Franklin County. And I'm Corey.
He's speechless.
My video went out. Sorry about that, but Corey Parent from Franklin County.
And I'm Bobby Sharp from Essex, Orleans County. Well, it's good to have you folks with us this morning. And I think before we get started, on behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank you guys for being here and thank your bosses for all the hard work that they've been doing to through this pandemic to help us Vermonters out, and it certainly has been a great help to the state of Vermont and our local citizens as well as our businesses around the state. We've had farm equipment dealerships in that have spoken, feed dealers, and they've all been very grateful for the financial help that has come from you folks in Washington, passed down to the states, and then we had the two ag committees set up a program for our agricultural people. So their accounts receivable have been halfway decent, and their sales have been pretty stable. So it's really made a big difference to our ag community as well as all of our communities. So with that, we'd like to, we wanted to get you in to both thank you for what you've done in the past and give us a little overview on what you think may occur in the future and move forward. I don't know if there's any particular order that you want to go in. If some of you have time restraints, if we've got an hour. So, but if there is none, I would start with Tom and then go to Erica and then to Ryan. So I don't know if any of the committee members have anything to say before we get started or not. If not, I'll turn it over to you, Tom.
Well, thank you. I think what we'll do is sort of introduce ourselves and just a little bit of 30,000-foot perspective on where we are at the start of the Congress, and then we can take a deeper dive into some of the issues of interest. Again, Tom Barry here. I handle the state outreach side of Senator Leahy's agriculture, environment, and energy portfolio. And my colleague Andrew can introduce himself. He takes the DC side of things. And I'm sure everybody on the call is familiar with Senator Leahy's current role, but sort of where things stand right now, very obviously, we have a new incoming majority in the Senate and a new administration we're working with the inauguration of President Biden. And so sort of big picture, what that means, Senator Leahy has been on the U.S. Senate Agriculture Committee beginning in 1975, and I expect he will stay there for this next 117th Congress. His other committees are Judiciary and Appropriations, and his leadership role in this Congress is as the chairman of the U.S. Senate Appropriations Committee, and we can get more into what that means as we have our conversation today. And he's also assumed the role of President Pro Tem of the Senate, which goes to the senior member of the majority party. And that role is to some extent ceremonial. He is, sits as the president of the Senate and is in the line of succession to the presidency after the Speaker of the House. So it's an important role, automatically makes him part of the Senate leadership team. And so, the senator's seniority has never been greater. His priorities will remain, strong on the areas that he's always represented on for agriculture. He's seen as a dairy leader in the Senate. He wrote the Organic Standards Act, et cetera. So, we can take a deeper dive into what some of that looks like. The other, what we know about the change in administration, of course, is that Secretary Vilsack has been nominated to return as secretary. We knew him well as President Obama's ag secretary, and in that role, he was in Vermont twice. Early on, he came and attended the St. Albans Dairy Cooperative annual meeting as well as the NOFA annual meeting, and then he came back a few years later to announce additional funding for clean water and conservation programs as we really, as a state, began to tackle those issues. So Andrew may know more, or Erica, about the schedule for confirmation hearings, but with that, it's sort of, that's who I am and where we are with the new Congress, the new administration. Happy to hand it to Erica.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Welcome, Erica.
Thanks, Senator Starr. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us today. Erica Campbell. I work for Senator Sanders as outreach rep and policy advisor. Agriculture and nutrition is my main area, as well as small business and economic development. And I won't say too much for my introduction. I'm looking forward to kind of getting into giving you an update today. I also cover nutrition issues for the senator. So looking forward to giving you a little update on that today and some of the small business provisions and how they've impacted agriculture in Vermont, as well as some of the new changes in the recent bill and how that may look for agriculture businesses accessing it this time around. I just giving a quick overview. Senator Sanders is going to be chairing the budget committee, and that as a rank, he's been ranking member in the minority for that. I think as a chair, this is going to really take on a new role and a new prominence, especially given the way in Washington that it's been prominent to have budget reconciliation as part of the process, so to move bills forward. So certainly he is very willing and to use that to move important things forward, especially to address our coronavirus and our health crisis and economic crisis, and a role in recovery, infrastructure development, et cetera, moving forward. So we will see what this session holds. Yeah, look forward to giving you a little update today.
Yep. And Ryan?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having us. Ryan McLaren. I work for Congressman Peter Welch here in Vermont, in agriculture, obviously. My portfolio also includes transportation, education, labor, and first responder issues. And yeah, we'll dive into some of the details here in a minute, but Peter currently serves on energy and commerce, government oversight and reform, and the House Select Committee on Intelligence, which is kind of rare. He's on 3 committees, so he's got a lot of work, but we're looking forward to working with the new administration and hopeful not only that we have more in terms of COVID relief here in the near future, but we can move forward on some of the more pressing issues like climate change and some of the other things that have been pent up for the last few years. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Let Andrew introduce himself and we'll dive into some of the details.
Yeah.
Sure.
Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Andrew Barenberg with Senator Leahy's office. As Tom said, I am his counterpart in the Senator's DC office, working on a range of natural resource issues, but agriculture included. I will just briefly touch on the process that we anticipate going forward for Secretary Vilsack's confirmation. We are in a bit of a limbo here. Leaders McConnell and Schumer negotiate an organizing resolution for the Senate. So technically, Democrats do not yet chair the Ag Committee, which means we've not been able to set a date for a hearing. Though Senator Leahy was able to meet with Secretary Vilsack via Zoom, of course, last week, and was able to reiterate his priorities for Vermont, including dairy, including the importance of nutrition programs to our state. Secretary Vilsack is of course well aware of Vermont priorities, having worked with the delegation over the 8-year period during the Obama administration. So looking forward to him getting into place. I'll also just briefly mention, announced this morning, the Biden administration announced a few nutrition-related executive orders, most notably expanding the Pandemic Ebt Program by as much as 15%. So although it remains to be seen the pace at which Congress can pass another coronavirus stimulus, and of course, Biden has put his preferred plan out at $1.9 trillion. We certainly are starting to see some of the quick executive actions that they're able to take to try and rework some of the formulas and try and get as much support out to folks who need nutrition assistance as quickly as possible. So hopefully we'll see more of that as it comes.
Well, that all sounds good, and our committee has been charged by our leadership here in Vermont to work on food security, nutrition for all, from school children to our senior citizens. And, it's really been the money that's flowed to us so far has been very helpful in making sure everybody has been fed and cared for. A couple of issues in the nutrition area that we've talked about and we've heard from our constituents in regards to, and I don't know, if it's going to be able to happen, but it's out of Washington. which would have to have. We've had quite a few farmers and rural groups ask about trying to move to whole milk in schools, school lunch programs, to try to get away from, the skim milk or what the heck ever they're using, 2% to boost that up. And the other big issue that we've heard about that would really make a difference in Vermont is a universal meals program. And, we've worked on that, trying to do it on a statewide basis, but financially, we've never been in a position here in Vermont, or our towns haven't, to be able to pull that off. But during this past year, with the help of what you folks have been getting done in Washington, it's basically worked into a universal meals program where all kids at schools at the age of 1 or from K through or preschool through 18 years of age eat for free, and it's really made a major difference for our folks. So I don't know if any of the other committee members have something they want to throw in here or not, but if not, we'll get right to the program. Corey?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the whole milk. I've only been Franklin County Senator going into my second term, but in both my campaigns and in my time in the House before that, just even symbolically having the ability to have whole milk in the schools is critical to our farmers. And you look at a lot of communities where these kids are drinking whole milk at home because they're producing the milk, and they go into their school and are being told it's not nutritious for them, or it's not great. I think that causes an issue. And then I'm really excited with the shifts in Washington and where our federal delegation is. I think we've always punched well above our weight, but even more so now. We look at what DFA and some of the other groups have done on cutting back on production, that 15%, that's hurt a lot of our farmers, and folks are being creative in Franklin County with bottling their own milk and finding resources. But anything, that we can do to help them kind of localize some of their production and take some of the surplus milk that can't go to the co-ops, if you will, that, they can do some cool stuff with, I think would be helpful and just to have on your radar.
Yep. Thank you, Corey. Senator Pearson?
Yeah, thank you. Just in a related ag thing, but not dairy specifically, we've been looking at how to boost school meals and shift to universal, and in particular try to get more local food into schools. And part of that challenge is unquestionably the complexity that the federal government puts on schools, and the Agency of Ed does a really good job trying to navigate between the federal government and local schools. And I gather the Republicans have been talking in recent years about a block grant kind of idea for states. And to me, there's, I understand some of the concerns about that, but what I guess I wonder if it suggests that there is maybe some way to meet so that we continue to get money in, hopefully maybe a little bit more money to support school nutrition, but also greater flexibility. I mean, it is truly wild what the schools have to go through, and we've just scratched the surface, but I'm not sure it could be more complex. So any help you could give our schools and the state generally to have a little more flexibility with some of that money would be greatly appreciated.
Tom, do you want me to jump in with a nutrition update? And then we can move to ag, since we're sort of been on the topic, and then we can kind of move off of it and jump into CFAP and other things. And I can wrap up maybe later with the small business PPP EIDL provisions. Does that sound okay? Okay, great. So the Vermont delegation, all three offices have been working incredibly closely this past year with the state agencies, DCF, Department of Health, and Agency of Education, and Agency of Agriculture on all of these nutrition provisions. Vermont was incredible how quickly it pivoted and developed plans and used every possible waiver to have the flexibility to get food out to Vermonters. And it is really remarkable how well we did that in the state. And you also used your coronavirus relief funds incredibly well. Everyone Eats is a phenomenal model across the country. So kudos to that. Thank you. So just a quick update on what kind of came into Vermont in 2020. We had about a normal year with SNAP, almost $100 million in 2020, which is actually not much more than a normal year. Interestingly, I think some people didn't, because of their unemployment income, didn't that boost. They actually fell off SNAP. There was a change in this newest that extra $300 boost won't actually count, so that will be helpful. But we had an emergency allotment, and that brought in another $10 million into the state to families on SNAP. And we also had, as Andrew mentioned, the Pandemic Ebt Program. It's a really unique thing that went out to school kids who are either on a universal meals in a universal meals school or are free and reduced hot lunch eligible. And that was $15 million to those families that received EBT cards. And a lot of those families actually aren't on SNAP. So it was really just a really incredible thing to help families get through. School meals, again, they pivoted. They were amazing. They did to go. They did the school bus routes. They used every waiver and flexibility. And in the most recent bill, there was a reimbursement increase because I think a lot of schools did have some extra costs that were incurred and basically, from the to-go containers and all of that as well. Just on the school meals topic, while everyone was talking about universal meals, Senator Sanders did introduce a bill last year with Congresswoman Omar. It's called the Universal School Meals Bill, and we are considering reintroducing it in this session, this coming year. And, there's also the child nutrition reauthorization, and that would be sort of an opportunity, again, to address things like whole milk, and other nutrition requirements in school. The streamlining and the simplification of some of the programs, it's extremely onerous and really cumbersome. All these different programs from the summer to the after school to, the various types of ways that you can CEP and ways you can try to work in the universal meals, categorical eligibility, the list goes on. It's complicated. And so simplifying that in any way possible while we continue to work towards federally funded universal meals for all children. Yeah. And that would be, and we do have a local food procurement extra reimbursement worked into that bill. So that's definitely on the table. And I would hope it would be if Vermont moves forward with any kind of state legislation for that. Farmers to Families, that was the USDA program, and the Abbey Group got the first two contracts, as you know. They had, I think, close to 600,000 boxes went out of lots of local food to people. The next two contracts were to two different out-of-state companies, and then the most recent round, a New Jersey company just got the bid, and that will bring in another 15,000 boxes. So it's kind of disappointing that we didn't get an in-state contractor, but there will be some boxes. And I think you probably are all aware the Vermont Food Bank is running their own Farmers to Family program with their philanthropic dollars that they received. That's about 20,000 boxes that they're currently having go out through about the early March. And I think I said that 20,000 boxes, I think, for that.
Is there any way to control those contracts? Like, I mean, if if the Abbey Group had continued getting those, seems like it would have helped the employment in Franklin County and basically all over Vermont to some extent, plus some of that produce that would have been locally gathered rather than going to New Jersey or wherever. I mean,
that was a a Trump administration USDA decision. I know Senator Leahy was working very hard on ensuring that there was fair bids, and it ended up coming and so to especially try to get Abbey Group and Vermont vendors to be competitive, and it ended up coming down to the lowest bidder. And a lot of these were just these big, huge companies. It was pretty disappointing of a program, but I think it's safe to say that with the Biden administration and the democratically controlled Senate, that if this program continues, we will see changes with it. I think there's a question of whether it will continue. We made the best of it in Vermont, but I think it wasn't an easy program and put a lot of the burden on the charitable food system and didn't really help a lot of small, medium-sized farmers. So that was that. I think that's the nutrition update. We also did see a WIC increase caseload in Vermont. So that was good. The Department of Health did a really great job there. Got just about every waiver possible and continued to serve. I think they had about an 8% increase caseload.
Any questions from any of the members? In regards, just one quick one. In regards to the Universal Meals Program, I think it would be important if you folks, as you work on that and talk about it in DC, even if you can't cover the whole bill because it's very expensive, I think a state like Vermont would participate in a cost sharing program. So if we got some money from you folks to get it going, and then states could opt in to help out, and then the municipalities should, they ought to have a little skin in the game as well. So, local, state, and feds, I think, could put together a pretty decent program where all our young people would be fed without having to carry cash to school and all that. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out.
That's great to know, Senator Starr. And when we reintroduce the bill, I'm happy to take that into consideration and share the bill with you if you want to take a look at it. Thanks.
Yeah, be very interested. So who's up next?
I could touch
ahead,
briefly
Andrew.
on the. Oh, sure. I was going to touch briefly on some of the dairy issues that you raised and that Senator Parent raised as well. So on whole milk in schools, USDA did issue a few rules in the last few years to allow for flexibility on low-fat flavored milk in schools. Frankly, the last time that Congress reauthorized the child nutrition reauthorization was 10 years ago now. The Healthy, Hungry-Free Kids Act was passed in 2010. Typically, that's reauthorized every 5 years. So certainly overdue for a new look at those programs. The outgoing chairman of the Senate Agriculture Committee, Pat Roberts from Kansas, made it his goal to get that done during the last Congress, but obviously with plenty else going on, I think the clock just ran out on that. So certainly an issue, and we've heard all the arguments about getting whole milk into schools. My non-expert opinion is that whole milk is far better to drink and more delicious. And I think there's certainly an argument about starting kids, introducing them to milk by putting the best dairy foot forward, I guess. On the Senator Parent mentioned a lot of the very kind of creative pivoting that a lot of dairy farmers in Vermont have had to do. Certainly the CFAP payments and the state program, particularly with all of its flexibility, has helped provide a bit of a bridge and a cushion to allow for some of that creativity. But one additional program that I want to mention is the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center that the Agency of Agriculture recently announced. That was authorized in the 2018 Farm Bill with the help of Senator Leahy to establish 3 regional centers across the country. Of course, Vermont applied, was successful in landing that bid. And since then, Senator Leahy has been able to increase the funding for that program to $20 million a year, $22 million a year in the FY21 bill. And that's thus far has been divided equally among the 3 centers. So that certainly was in the works prior to the beginning of the pandemic, but certainly couldn't come any sooner. And part of the intent of that program is to help dairy producers diversify their products, reach new markets, things like rotational grazing. It's a whole range, and now with at minimum $6 million a year coming to Vermont for that specific purpose, I think that'll both help farmers capitalize on the creativity and pivoting that they've already done, but also help to expand that and increase their resilience to the types of market disruptions that we've certainly seen before this pandemic, but reached new levels in the last year.
Are you all set, Andrew?
Yes, excuse me. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll stop there. Kick it over to Ryan, maybe.
Yeah. Any questions for Andrew that's fresh in your minds? We'll go on to Ryan or Tom.
Maybe Tom.
For
beauty.
I'd be yeah, sure. Thank you, Senator Starr, for your recognition early on of how important the federal support was. I can quickly summarize because there were a lot of programs. I'll talk more about the direct payments to Vermont agricultural producers. This sets aside any small business programs or the nutrition programs like the food box program, but through what we came to know as CFAP 1 and CFAP 2, as well as the CRF that were federal dollars that the Vermont Legislature got involved with. Obviously, you all got pretty deeply involved in that and did a good job putting those out the door. The total and direct payments to Vermont agricultural producers among those 3 programs was $104 million last year. And in addition, although it wasn't Corona relief, the NRCS put about $11 million out the door in conservation funding to Vermont farmers, continuing their programs despite the pandemic. And so in total, among the CRF, the CFAP, and the NRCS EQIP program, there was about $115 million that hit the ground in Vermont in payments, direct payments to agricultural producers. So it was an unprecedented level of support at a very important time. The committee can be proud of your role in helping to put it out. Some of the USDA programs didn't roll out quite as quickly as we would have liked in the spring, but ultimately they got up and running. Where we are at this time is that the USDA, there was a coronavirus relief bill that was passed just before the end of the year. In case you missed it, there was a lot going on, what with the election and other interesting things. But there was a relief bill that was passed, and that, among other things, adds funding to the CFAP program. And late last week, the USDA put out notice that they're continuing, maybe, I haven't seen it called this, but maybe CFAP 2.5. And that's the program that can make direct payments to dairies as well as diversified agriculture from, specialty crops to maple. And it provides producers with the opportunity to come back in and have another run at the CFAP program to adjust where they landed in the first round. I haven't seen a lot of details or talk with any farmers who have been back in, but certainly directing any farmers who you deal with who are looking for additional federal support or feel maybe they need to adjust where they landed under the CFAP programs to contact their FSA office to engage in those programs going forward. So the as has been, I think Andrew or maybe Erica mentioned, the first thing we'll see out of the gate with the new administration as far as assistance will be through the plan that President Biden has announced in $1.9 trillion in COVID relief. And the agricultural component of that is not well defined, but there is a lot of attention given in what we've seen so far to nutrition and to supporting schools. And so some of what you talked about related to school meals and nutrition will certainly be part of the priorities. And I see my colleague Polly has joined us. I sent a quick note. Help, Polly, when considering your interest in the school meals programs and nutrition. Certainly Erica and Ryan and Andrew covered those issues, but Polly is the senator's lead on nutrition in Vermont. So she's been able to join us too.
Well, Polly, it's great to have you with us. We're all very hungry this morning. So you bring us any nutritious food? Just kidding. Welcome. And we've talked quite a bit earlier in regards to, universal meals and farm to family foods, all kinds of food issues, and very interested in that. And I don't know if I think, Tom, the things you were just talking about, maybe Polly could tell us more about in regards to nutrition. But these are they going to be run by the federal government, or will that be passed through to like the states to manage? Do you know how it's going to work?
So thanks for having me. I'm glad to be part of this conversation. I think we'll have many more in the future. And you, I'm sure, heard a good summary of the nutrition provisions in the last bill and what we can see coming up from Erica and Ryan. We work very close on these issues. With regards to whether it will be passed through to the states or will be managed through the federal government, it's going to depend on the individual funding source. So the next bill leans heavily on funding through existing federal programs, I believe, and many of those are run through the federal government and kind of sub-granted with guidelines through the states, such as the existing school meal program. So the large programs with the state discretion, like the Coronavirus Relief Fund, are kind of TBD.
Yep. Senator Collmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I picked up on a couple of times, I think Ryan mentioned it and Tom did as well. And by the way, I just want to echo our chair's thanks for your efforts on behalf of Vermonters with the last round of CRF. It was, it's just really nice to know we have some people that are working hard for all of us in Washington. And so thank you for all your efforts. You mentioned the 1.9 trillion. That at least is what the number is right now. That probably isn't going to be the exact number at the end of the drive, but is it likely that Vermont will get the same part of that In other words, we got 1.2 billion from the last round of CRF funding. Is it likely, and I realize you don't have a crystal ball, so you don't know, but is it likely we're going to get about the same sort of cut of the pie?
From what I've seen and what's been outlined thus far, it lays out a lot more channels for the money to flow through. The CARES Act was, it needed to be very quick. And so there was not a lot of detail in the legislation as far as the rollout of those dollars. And it was possible to say, here's this big chunk of money that's going to come to states at their discretion. And the Vermont delegation, Senator Leahy and his work on appropriations, three of his favorite words are small state minimum. And I know the other members of the delegation worked on that as well. But I guess that's the long answer. The short answer is I don't know what the Vermont share may sugar off to. But it'll be harder to apply a small state minimum to a big bundle of those dollars, would be my perception, because it's going to be a lot more targeted to schools, to towns, to states, to businesses, and not come out in a few large pieces where it's pretty easy to attach a small state minimum. I don't know if others among the delegation staff.
No, I think that's right. I also don't know, but I think, one of the differences in the concept of state and local aid in the new bill is that it could truly be local. At least what came out of the House at the end of last year, not even the end, in the middle of last year in May, included funding directly to municipalities. So how that changes the proportion of what goes to the state and what goes to towns, I don't know. But it's a centerpiece of the plan, state and local aid. So that at the very least is positive.
Yep.
And we have a summary of that bill that I can share with your committee clerk, who can share it with you. And that lays out the Biden's proposal for how that money will flow through from the federal government.
Yeah, that would be most helpful if you could send Linda a copy of that. Then we can work from that. Yep, that'd be real good.
Will do.
Yeah. Questions of the committee. So we're down to the clean water issue in the environmental sector of, our Natural Resources Committee looks at that and they sort of think they have a full jurisdiction over that. But our dairy farms and ag lands, cover a lot of clean water issues. And so we in the Ag Committee are very involved with that, working through the Ag Agency and Natural Resources. And, you folks would know because you're from Vermont here, but our farmers have done a pretty damn good job putting in different water quality improvements on the farms, no-till and cover cropping, and they've really done well to help with our water quality problem that we have in the lake. And so could you give us any more info on the environmental side of what's happening in DC to help with water quality?
I'll take a first swing at that if okay with folks. Certainly the federal government plays a huge role in helping farmers, and you've probably already had farmers in to testify or heard from others, Vermont Agency of Agriculture, that as far as phosphorus reductions thus far under the TMDL, well over 90% of the accountable phosphorus reductions have been made by the agricultural sector, primarily dairy farms. And 60% of that has been paid for with federal dollars under NRCS. So to the extent we're making progress on our phosphorus goals under the TMDL, agriculture is way out ahead. And, they were early on the regulated community and had the biggest chunk handed to them or to bite off under the TMDL. So there's been a lot of progress made there. With that said, there was a tremendous focus, and now NRCS in Vermont is going through a strategic planning process, and our state director, state conservationist Vicki Drew, would be good to hear from on this, where they're asking questions now of stakeholder groups, including farmers, as to whether they maintain an absolute laser beam focus on ag water quality, or whether they take a look at some of the other programs that they can also work with under EQIP. And the total dollars available for ag conservation work are determined in the Farm Bill. And it's not annual appropriations, but we've got solid Farm Bill funding. And Secretary Vilsack pushed a little extra money Vermont's way when he, last time he sat in that seat. So we'll certainly be in touch with him. But I think we're always looking at the next Farm Bill and the conservation programs, but those programs are in place. One thing you'll see with this administration is the, really doesn't impact Vermont that much, but the one law that I know is of great interest to the ag community is the Waters of the United States, WOTUS, and what waters fall within federal jurisdiction. And nationally, farms and agricultural groups have pushed back against federal jurisdiction, and the Trump administration had adopted rules that greatly loosen federal or reduce federal jurisdiction. We can expect to see, I think, the Biden administration move in a different direction on that. It's a very slow process, and ultimately the impact in Vermont isn't all that significant, because the state water quality regulations and the required agricultural practices probably go beyond what may or may not fall within the jurisdiction as determined by the Clean Water Act and Waters of the U.S. So that's sort of where we stand at this point. I don't know if others have more to add.
I'll jump in if that's all right.
Sure.
Thank you. Just to add a few things, kind of foreshadowing what might be to come, based on his public comments and conversation with the senator last week. Secretary Vilsack and the Biden administration, I guess more generally, do plan to make climate change a top priority. As that applies to USDA, the secretary and his transition staff have been talking about finding new ways to incentivize climate smart ag practices. One of the vehicles would be the $30 billion Commodity Credit Corporation that is an existing authority at USDA that the Trump administration and Secretary Perdue primarily used for direct payments to producers to offset the trade war impact. But the flexibility baked into that account could allow a lot of direct payments for different types of practices, including water quality. I'm sure. I mean, there's plenty of overlap, of course, between things like cover cropping and soil health, climate change, and water quality. The secretary comes from the dairy sector. I mean, between being ag secretary and now he served as the CEO of the U.S. Dairy Export Council. So between, I think, this delegation and the secretary's interest in and work in dairy, I would expect certainly dairy to have a seat at that table as those dollars are being allocated.
Yeah. Erica, did you have something you wanted to add? Or Corey, Senator Parent has a question.
Well, not really a question. I just think, too, along with water quality and what we're doing for dairy farmers, as we're taking the steps to really mitigate the impacts of climate change in Washington now. Anything we can do for even pilot programs on carbon sequestration on our farms and other projects. I know our farmers are very interested in figuring out a new revenue stream there. So I know our delegation's excited probably about that work, but let's keep our guys at the top of the list for that if we can.
Any other questions from committee members right now? No? So Erica, did you have a question or a statement or?
If you would like, I'm happy to give a quick small business update. I know Ryan also had a few other just sort of loose ends and other pieces of the bill he wanted to, or just of the last relief bill he wanted to share as well. But if you're already really familiar with the new changes to PPP and EIDL, I can skip that.
Yeah, and Ryan, you want to jump in? We need support over in the House as well. So I think we're in good shape on the Senate side.
We are in very good shape on the Senate side, Senator. I just had a few, I think, odds and ends from the coronavirus relief package that aren't specific to ag, but are important, I think, to highlight, particularly for rural communities in Vermont and anywhere else across the country. Obviously, we talked about the CRF funds, the first round, and I'm sure you all know that the deadline for that, for spending that money, has been extended to the end of 2021. So I know we did a great job getting that money out the door. You all did. But there's a little bit more of a longer time horizon on that. I hope your constituents have started seeing the second round of direct payments, $600 to everyone. We're hearing from a lot of folks we heard from a lot of constituents that had problems the first time around that didn't see it or thought they got shortchanged. So if you hear from constituents about that, just feel free to send them our way. And what else am I looking at here? Erica can touch on the small business stuff. There's a lot of really great changes, particularly for farmers. So hopefully we'll see more small farmers take advantage of those things. So I'll let her talk about that. There was $3 billion in additional funding for the provider relief funds, which goes to hospitals and healthcare providers, which has been a lifeline for particularly the rural healthcare system. It's kept hospitals, smaller hospitals afloat. There's $250 million in there for telehealth, which I think has been an important lifeline for folks that aren't able to access healthcare easily, or they have to travel a long way, or they're at risk. So that's positive. Obviously, the unemployment programs, pandemic unemployment programs, have been extended through March 14th, which I know our governor had talked a lot about, and is essential for so many folks. And then one other change is the spending package waived the cost matching requirement for Northern Border Regional Commission grants, which will be great for communities in your neck of the woods, Senator Starr and Senator Perry. Actually, I mean, really everywhere except Chittenden County now. So a good forward-looking win for us. And then finally, I think you might have seen some press about it, but Peter was the House lead on what we call the Save Our Stages Act, which was $15 billion, which is not a small amount of money, dedicated for small independent music venues or theaters, performing arts spaces. So, you know, the Paramount Theater in Rutland, for example, the Flynn in Burlington, would be eligible to for this new program that was intended to keep them afloat throughout this crisis, because they're the first to close and might be the last to reopen after this pandemic, and they're obviously vital parts of our communities here in Vermont and across the country. So that was a huge win, both for Peter, but especially for the folks that are operating these venues.
Yeah. What about, we haven't talked about it, I don't think, there's been a lot of discussion here in Vermont in regards to extending broadband out to the rural areas. Is there, and I'm sure you've all heard this, we as a state don't have the money alone to fund that, and people have talked about, well, what we need is a program like rural electrification had back in the late 30s to finally get this done. Is there money in any of these different programs that would help push broadband to the last house or into the rural communities?
Yeah, there absolutely was. And it's, the broadband issue has been something Peter's worked on his whole career and plans to work on into the future, because we haven't quite solved it. The top line number from the bill was $7 billion. So like not nothing to shake a stick at. Included
Ryan,
$300 million directed towards rural areas. I'm not our broadband expert, so I don't know exactly how that money is going to flow into those communities, but it also included $65 million to complete broadband maps, because to have a real an accurate estimate of what an accurate understanding of what areas are in need, because if you rely on the providers, they basically will tell you that every inch of the state is covered with cell and broadband, and we know that that's not true. And the $250 million in telehealth funding I talked about is really broadband funding. It's through an FCC program that is intended to make sure people have the ability to access telehealth through broadband. So there's some money there for that as well. And then there's $3.25 billion for low-income broadband program through the FCC's Lifeline program. So it would provide, I think, $50 a month to households that are eligible for that program or are eligible for Pell Grants, recently unemployed, or are eligible for free and reduced lunch. So that's, cash to the consumer to help pay for broadband. It doesn't solve the access issue, but it will help with folks that don't have access for economic reasons.
And Senator Starr, we also just had $32 million come into the state through the FCC program, the rural digital program that they run. You probably all know that the USDA program, we don't have an easy time accessing at this point. So most of those funds in the last bill, a lot of those will go through grant programs rather than the state block grant that we were hoping for. So we do need a lot more money. It will hopefully be in infrastructure bills in the future. We know we need to have a massive federal investment in this, as you said. But we did get that to 4 providers, that $32 million. So that's already starting to be rolled out. There's a map if you're interested. I'm happy to, I don't know if I can dig it right now to put in the chat by 10 o'clock we are at right now. But I'm happy to send that to Linda. And it has a map of all of the, it was put together by DPS in Vermont. So, but I'm happy to send it to you.
So you could send that to Linda when you get it, and she'll disperse it, get it out to us. I guess we're running out of time. Are there any other questions from any of the committee members to our delegation that are with us? And
And I am happy to send you a summary. I guess you're probably all up to speed on the PPP and the idle changes, because they were pretty significant for farmers. So, but if you're not, I'm happy to send you a written summary of that.
Yeah, that wouldn't do any harm. We try to stay abreast of it, but, with everything that's happening, you miss some things. Well, in the future, if there's anything that we can help you folks with, feel free to call on us, and want to thank all of you for your time this morning, and thank you for your hard work you've been doing, and wish you well into the next year to help us some more. So thanks a lot, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Thank
Senator.
you.
Hopefully we'll see you in person by then.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So committee, we have somebody with us. I don't really know who he is, but somebody's on our screen. Hey, did any of you want to take a quick break before we get started? You want to take a break, Michael?
That'd be lovely, Senator. Thank you.
Why don't we take, a couple of minutes and 5 minutes, and then we'll be right back and be with you, Michael. You can get your thoughts all in a row to give us a good presentation.
I'm on it, Senator. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll catch you in a minute. Michael's with us. Good morning, Commissioner. It's great to have you with us. I trust that you've done okay since we last talked, stayed healthy and everything.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Good morning, all. Happy to be with you as well. Wish we were jammed in that little room together, but this will do, and we're all making the best. And yes, thank you. Myself and family, we're stayed healthy and doing the best we can. So
Yeah.
like everyone challenged with it. So
Are you missing Sam?
Yeah. So I don't know if you all actually know or heard, but officially Sam, Deputy Lincoln, resigned at the end of November. And miss him. I'd welcome him back. And what I've been saying to folks is, if you see Sam, tell him he's late for work. I'd like to see him show up, actually. Now he made a decision to go back to the private sector, and it was his decision, and he was great about it. Frankly, he let me know early, and wanted to do it in a way that worked best for us and the governor, and timing wise. And it's his story to tell. And I'm proud of what we did together, and he was a tremendous help. I know he's interested in continuing to be productive and helpful from the private sector, and I miss him. And but I spent a lot of years running solo, and I'm back to that. So we'll do the best we can. We got a great team, and we'll keep chugging on.
Yeah, he's a good man.
That wasn't nothing to do with our part of it, though, or the state. He opted to go back to work himself, right? At home.
Yeah, he's got his farm and a logging business, and a couple of kids, teenage boys that are getting more and more involved. And again, I mean, I really feel it's his story to tell. But it was a tough decision, I think he would say, and he enjoyed and valued the work we did here with you all. He's proud of it. I know he wanted to do more. 4 years was enough, I guess.
Well, he did a heck of a job, and I can understand and know a guy at his age, with that business back home. If you stay in this business, it costs you a lot of money some days to do this work and not be home looking after your real work.
Right.
Exactly. I've been through all that, and but Sam was he was a great addition, and knew the work on the ground well and presented it well. No, he was great to work with.
He really was. I'm glad to hear you say that, and I'll pass it along to him. I know he'll really respect and appreciate that. Took a lot of pride in it, and again, I think we became a great team and became good friends as well. I learned a ton from him. He says he learned from me. I hope so. I think we complemented each other well. Had unique skill set, perspective, experience that he brought. It's not going to be replaced. So we have a plan to kind of move ahead and fill that. That was priority work for us. So we want to rebuild that capacity, but we're just starting with the assumption that Sam 2.0 isn't walking through that door, and we're just not going to find that. So
Give him my best,
I'm happy
please.
to chat with you about our plans for how to do it. And we're in a hiring freeze and we have limitations, but again, I have a super team at FPR and everyone's been responding well, and we'll keep on keeping on the way we always have.
Please give him my best.
Will do, Senator. Thank you.
Well, we've got, roughly 50 minutes, an hour, whatever it takes, Michael. I think, we've got some interest in what you folks have been doing and what you're going to be doing, and in regards to forestry and and give us a little update on how the businesses are doing in the forestry business.
Sure, and I can cover whatever. I think with the original, just so you know, I think the original message came. You wanted to hear about how we spent Corona relief funds.
Yeah.
So I'm prepared to do that, but I'm prepared to talk about whatever. So the update on the forest economy is the things we've been talking about for years with you now on the global issues, the regional issues, the loss of the low grade markets, the workforce erosion, the sort of cultural malaise, if you will. Those all continue, and I think the pandemic and the economic shutdown has only exacerbated it in some ways. That forestry, logging, and certain elements of the supply chain were considered essential was very important, but it wasn't a magic kind of bullet, in that other elements of the supply chain weren't, and so there were major disruptions accruing accordingly, and so some who could work really couldn't, because they either upstream of them or downstream of them there were disruptions that interrupted their ability to work. There were increased expenses. There was difficult labor and workforce issues. So folks were challenged, and those challenges continue, even while folks are trying to meet increasing demands for a variety of forest-grown products, from paper and packaging to wood energy, electricity, all that are needed during the pandemic. So, there's been a couple of little hopeful bright spots in sort of local recoveries, but and now weather is just another factor, which always is in agriculture and forestry. So it's not been great for logging right now, and folks trying to do the right thing with respect to the ground conditions. So it's just one thing after another. It's a heck of a way to make a living, and they're all stressed. But I think, frankly, the Corona relief funds that you allocated for us to establish the Forest Economy Stabilization grants was extremely important, and I think very well received. We were allocated $5 million. We pushed out under $5 million. We paid Vita, who were really an essential partner in helping stand it up and get it and make it professional. Paid them their $50,000, and there was a sum left. We didn't meet all of it, and that went back to ACCD to go into other grant making. So $4+ million out the door. I'll pull up a quick summary. The businesses that were approved for grants, we had 32 that were managing or harvesting timber. That's consulting foresters, logging contractors, maple sap producers. 24 wood manufacturers, distributors, and crafters, 8 forest trucking enterprises, and 6 wood processing facilities, sawmills, fuel wood producers, and a veneer mill. 13 counties were represented. We had no applications from Grand Isle, so otherwise full. We got money everywhere. The average grant per applicant was 50,000. They were capped at 100. And the average number of employees per applicant was about 7 employees. So they're medium-sized, small to pretty small to maybe medium-sized. That's an average. So there were some outliers that were bigger. With our annual gross sales of applicants across that board of well over $1 million. So go ahead.
Was there some that applied that were rejected? And if they were, what type of problems did they have so they had to be rejected?
Well, it was tricky because of the eligibility criteria. It was revenue replacement if they demonstrated cumulative revenue loss of $5,000 or more between March 1 and July 31st of 20. We later added August and September, and then compared that to the same period previously. So some just owing to the nature of their business, to the timing, given mud season shutdowns and some of them just didn't get in because of those sort of technicalities. And that was somewhat heartbreaking. We ended up advising some of them to go elsewhere for business assistance, and they did. They just didn't happen to get this assistance. We made a team of our staff available around the clock, 7 days a week, to give assistance in finding relief, helping them with the grant, with the applications, with their eligibility, kind of coaching. VHCB did that as well. Their Farm and Forest Viability Program staff helped, giving free coaching and help. So we just kept trying to, if not here, where? And they were able to, some of them were able to take double grants. They're just not for the same loss, right? You couldn't double dip, but for one program, you could receive relief funding and then find additional relief somewhere else for another kind of loss, right? It wasn't double dipping, and there was very closely scrutinized. I think, again, it was really important. I think in terms of kind of a soft importance, like the message that was sent that you matter and we value you and your contributions to the economy and the livelihood and the livability of our state, but also just a hard direct business assistance. Some of them, we know it made a difference. They weren't going to make it. Some of them still may not, and that's concerning. We don't want to just prop up a failing business. I don't think it's that. I think it is extremely difficult out there.
What about the Rygate plant where the wood chips flow to?
Yep.
Are we getting enough chips manufactured to make sure that plant stays running and producing electricity?
My understanding is yes. I haven't heard of any disruptions in that supply chain. As you know, Sam actually coined the phrase Burlington Electric and Rygate Power Station. They have been lighthouses in a terrible storm for local producers, and that trickles all the way back to landowners and the land itself. So, there's difficulties and issues. I think it's more on the logger side and the ability to operate side. But I think their demand side is still there. Haven't heard any disruptions there. I know at Burlington Electric, I know they are moving ahead with their work with the hospital at UVM and for a thermal loop, which is really exciting to add that efficiency, to capture that that sort of lost efficiency in waste heat. And so that says to me that they are continuing and looking to continue and broaden and become more modern and more efficient, which is really terrific. I think they're making strides, and that'll be really a great step forward.
And if by any chance we have another package of funds coming our way, what have you thought about what we could do better to help in a more efficient way with your crew, the people that you represent? Because the last trip around, it was our committee that found and put together the the 5 million for forestry, and what could we do better for that if we got lucky and got some more money?
Great question, and I'll think on it further. I would say that's one of the great things, and I'd be looking forward, hopefully, that there would be another round, because it was extremely difficult to stand up a grant program with vigor through ACCD with VITA's assistance and other partners. We've done it, and so now we don't have to go through that again. We know how to do it. Probably learned a few lessons, and I think we're ready to deploy. We did a lot of outreach. We built a listserv. We had webinars, and I think we've stood up that kind of infrastructure, if you will, to kind of a grant program to support it. So I think we're ready to plug and play. I think we might want to have a bit more time and thinking on the eligibility criteria and make sure we don't have these kind of loopholes or gaps in who can get what, and have it be logical and helpful. I think that's worth. I think we're ready to go. I think businesses would be happy to receive and need it. And I think maybe we would just be a little bit more strategic about how we stand it up. I would say the eligibility requirements and what we're trying to help.
Yeah.
I think we missed a few. There's some bright spots out there. Wood energy has emerged as, I would say, it's energy security. It's far less vulnerable to disruptions. That's the big message through all of this, is that the way we're built, exporting low grade to other places, bringing in, dead dinosaurs to heat our homes, we're so vulnerable. And we need to rebuild. You've heard this from me for a long time. We need to rebuild our forest economy and an energy economy on renewability, sustainability, best practices, and a close, careful local attention, and having mills adding value here to our wood and then sending it elsewhere. That's what we've learned, and it's only made. And we've been singing the song for some time, frankly, and I think it's really just underscored the importance that we still have a chance to actually get it right here, and that's a silver lining in this. Is so wood energy, both advanced modern wood heating, efficient clean burning, modern approaches to wood burning, wood-fired electric generation for baseload power, continuing. That would be important to look at. I think what we also learned is that, I just had a call. I've been checking in with some mills and all, and I spoke with one recent, and he said it's the best year they ever had. This would be a relatively small mill, Clifford Lumber in Heinsberg, Chittenden County, and he told me, he said the best year he's ever had, and that's
what does he saw? What do they make there?
Firewood. And people early in the spring, people were, we still needed to heat, and people were worried about disruptions and could they get it. So he had a banner year there, and kiln dried firewood, locally produced firewood. And also, we heard this from several mills, the smaller ones who produce, it was like do-it-yourselfers. First, it was raised beds, people putting gardens in, doing home projects, renovations, decks, additions, patios, etc. And so you couldn't get that kind of dimensional lumber, rough sawn and all for a while. I mean, it really was quite a strong run on it as Vermonters were stuck at home and decided through the beautiful summer to do it-yourself projects. I think that's really interesting, and they did pretty well. And maybe so looking there is something to grow in a local community sort of watershed scale of locally produced wood. That's how it used to be. There used to be a sawmill pretty much near everybody. You go get your wood, and now you drive to Home Depot, and who knows, and where it's coming from and how it was produced, and all of that gain is made by someone else. So I'd say those are some areas to look at. I think if we're going to get this right, it does invite questions about our approach to design, permitting, marketing. We have to have a more modern, creative, innovative approach. The stuff we used to do isn't going to work anymore. And still also looking hopefully towards new forest products and new technologies that kind of build on and maybe even piggyback on existing like pulping facilities, but can turn that into other products, food additives, concrete additives. There's nanocellulosic technology that's kind of taking off. Pretty exciting. And we want to be ready to attract those businesses and grow them here, to have a kind of a modern approach to our long held traditions of forestry in the state that have created this fantastic largely healthy forested environment that contributes much public good.
I think Senator Colmer and Senator Pearson each have a question. Go
Thank you,
ahead.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Commissioner, I'm just wondering, when we talk with some of the dairy folks with respect to the CRF money they got, part of the issue that came up was some people were left out because of different things. The caps that were put on the money, some of them are not experts at record keeping in terms of showing losses.
Right.
The 5 million that wound up in your sort of ballpark, did we do okay with those kinds of things? Or if the chair is correct and we have the opportunity down the road to get part of the next funding package, do we need to change things in the forestry sector to make it easier for people to take advantage of it?
I think so. I mean, I think largely it worked pretty well, and we've kind of cleared many of those hurdles. So I think that's good. But I think, yes, again, I think looking at what we're trying to backfill, what we're trying to help with, and the kind of criteria, the eligibility, it probably could use some tweaks. And I think I'm happy to, I'll go back and we'll put a team on it and start thinking about how would we do it differently? What would we recommend? So I think we did learn some of that.
That would be very helpful. That'd be great.
I think so. We missed some folks, I'm sure of it, through this program. And fortunately, there were a variety of them again. So we were able to steer them, coach them to elsewhere. So most got some form of assistance, but many of those same attributes that you describe in the dairy world, I think also exist in the forest economy. There are a lot of similarities in the kind of culture and how folks approach their businesses. Another one I just realized I should mention, it's big. We heard this a lot, is workforce. That it's throughout, from the primary sector, that would be logging, through trucking, all the way through the milling and secondary manufacturing. Finding skilled labor willing to do it in all of those is really a problem. And we know a lot about exemplary ecologically based forestry. And we have a culture and a growing appreciation, and that's really great. But it's useless without the other pieces, and the workforce is chief among them. So I think, we've been working on this with Secretary French and others, and looking at tech schools and trying to, how do we get the pipeline of kids and make it something you can have pride in, working in the woods. There's a good living to be made, and we need to make it so people value that. I've probably told you this story before, but I began my career at a forestry school first in Sweden, and it was profound. It was a long time ago now, but it still sticks with me. That is, there was a respect, if not a full-on reverence, for loggers, for people who worked in the woods. They were appreciated for what they did and what they contributed and how they did it. We need that here. We need a lot of love for farmers, and as it should be. I think we need to find a way to have that same love for the people who work the forest lands. And that's a big part of attracting and changing the dialogue and the narrative in our schools about what's your track, what's your possibility, what's your path. And we need to do the credentialing and the safety and workforce professionalism training and just grow that. It's a little bit moribund and somewhat, it's a little, I don't know what the right word for it is. We're not optimizing it. And I think we need to. That would be one piece. And so other investments in training and workforce development and this sort of cultural spirit of a culture of forestry that is appreciated and understood for what it is, that people can take pride in. I know that's somewhat soft and fuzzy, but I think it's worth investing in. I really do.
Yep. Senator Pearson.
Thanks, Commissioner. Good
Chris?
to see you.
Thank you.
Yep. Can you hear me?
I can. Yep.
I'm always struck when you're talking with us that there's this incredible confluence of sort of old school Vermont values, local communities, which have been, maybe amplified here in the pandemic, the rural economy, and ultimately where I think we need to go in terms of a sustainable future. And forestry, local ag, I mean, these are front and center. It's why I like serving on this committee. It really is where the rural economy and the climate challenge meets. To that end, and to building on some of what you've been saying, over the last few years, we've been talking to you about a wood pellet manufacturer, and we know we have one down, I think, in Brandon, somewhere in Rutland County. That guy is very dedicated to sustainability, pays a living wage, and he and others have been exploring other facilities, and I would guess that hasn't been easier during the pandemic. But I wonder if you could just give us an update. Have we figured that out yet? Any progress to report, or is this continues to be an ongoing challenge?
Thank you for all of that, and dittos. Yes, and it's heartening to hear you speak that way about it and see the big picture and the connections. To the question, I think the pandemic has kind of paused some of it, but indeed we have I think a vision for this sort of, as I call it, kind of a county or watershed even scale. I think we have one pellet facility, and it's fantastic. Wood pellet in Clarendon and North Clarendon, Senator Collmore. I always confuse. It's there somewhere in Rutland County, and they do a great job. And it's a 30-50 mile radius, their woodshed, and so we would need those distributed all over the state, and that would be beautiful. And we continue to have investors and entrepreneurs thinking, hey, what about this? And we help them look at sites where it might make sense, and we're trying to give sort of assistance there. It seems to have cooled off a little. I'm guessing it's attributable somewhat to the pandemic. I think largely, though, it's the market signal isn't there. So it's kind of a chicken and egg. We got to have the demand. And that's why you've helped us with incentivizing installation of pellet boilers and at various scales, the institutional scale, all the way down to the homeowner scale. And maybe I should arrange to have our wood energy coordinator, Emma, come in and visit with you and give you a better update on where this all stands and what's been the impact of those kind of tax credits and incentives that we've created. I think the numbers are ticking up, and that's why I'd love to get you a better report, a more full report, because I think that's what's needed to show the market signal that people want to buy this stuff, and they want to buy a premium Vermont brand that they're sure came from well-stewarded family forests, as opposed to importing impure pellets from somewhere else that have plastic in them and that came from plantation, exploitation forests in the South. That's not what we're about. So giving a partial answer, I think the interest is still there. We certainly have it and see it as part of the longer vision to rebuild. It would be really helpful. It has to be at scale, though. Like Chris Brooks has done there is really great in showing the way, as you say, with great approach to it. He gets the whole story, and it's a good one. So we need to replicate that. And I think if we create the right environment, the entrepreneurs will fill it. They'll come. And that's what we're
and low fossil fuel prices really make it tough. I mean,
thank you. Yeah, that's actually paramount across all of it. You're right. That's where it starts, and it's hard to compete with, unless we consider the external cost and the true cost accounting. And then people say, oh, it's cheaper. I'm like, no, actually it's not if you think of the big picture here. But indeed, out of pocket for sure.
Yeah, and it filters even into the propanes and other things.
So
let me ask you this. The other piece of that is getting it to stay local. It's terrific that he is harvesting sustainably and locally, but then isn't a lot of his product shipped out, or is he feeding commercial, our schools or others locally? Because that's a pretty important piece.
It is.
And as I understand it, we have not perfected that. We're always striving in the right direction, but maybe it is subject for a longer conversation, but since you're here.
I think it would be. I'd hope that you'd ask for that. We'll get it to you. We'll bring Emma in with me. She's got the goods and can report on it. I think you're right. I think that the demand here isn't quite there yet. So I think they have to sell elsewhere, and that's what we want to build. Let's, if you would, Senator Starr, if that's of interest, I'll wait to hear from Linda, but we'll get Emma right in here. She's ready to go and give you just the latest snapshot, and I'm sure that will stimulate more questions from you and maybe some good ideas on where do we go next and how do we keep this thing growing. I think it would be.
No, that would be very, very important. And the other thing, I don't know if any of the committee was around back when we had quite an incentive program. Maybe it was 15, 18 years ago. If you put in a wood filer like in school, we would pay, the state would pay like 80 or 90% of that cost. And that's kind of gone away.
It has completely gone away.
And like our local hospital, the State House across the street from the State House, that's all heated with wood chips. And maybe if we had a supplier, pellets are a lot more efficient to burn than wood chips. And, so I think there's room for a lot of improvement in our public buildings to be pushed toward putting in boilers that would use pellets. And pellets also put more people to work.
Yes.
Whereas wood chips, you've got the guy that cuts the trees and runs the chipper and the trucker.
Yeah.
But pellets, you've got manufacturing and, they help other little businesses, whether it's a machine shop making stuff for them.
Exactly.
But,
I agreed. And I suspect you've been speaking with Senator Perchlik. And, if you don't know, he's been really great on this stuff with his other job, and which we appreciate. And I've been speaking with him. He reached out about some similar ideas recently. So it's very exciting. I think there are tremendous opportunities. I would just say, I think, just for consideration, at least the way I've been thinking about this for some time is, the pellet thing has these virtues, and I'm excited about that. I don't know that we would recommend, I think we want to mix. I think we still want cordwood, chunk wood. Most Vermonters that have a wood lot, that's, an astronomical number of Vermonters still heat with chunk wood. And I think we have the technology now to do that in a really clean and efficient way. So let's keep that in the mix. And at the other end of the scale, the industrial sort of strength chipping, it has its strengths and benefits. It uses a different product from the woods. And so I think that it needs to be this mix of the fuel types that we're using for both heat and thermal applications. And there's exciting possibilities for all of them. So I just wanted to caution that. I don't think that pellets alone would be something to shoot for, at least in the near to medium term.
what about a pellet run automobile?
I think it's been tried. I think I know it's been tried. Gasification, I know of a couple of stories, but I think your Tesla is probably a better idea, Senator.
Oh, God. But we don't get paid enough to afford a Tesla. Just our hired help has a Tesla. Like guy by the name of Peter. Well, other questions for the commissioner? More to give us, Commissioner?
Do you want to hear about what we did with a few $1 million of CRF money on public lands in response to the explosion of recreational use? We spent, it was really fantastic. You want to hear about that?
The other committee I sit in, we got kind of a pretty big bill handed to us yesterday and budget adjustment from your other areas that you run.
Yes, we are in budget adjustment with state parks with a request for $1.2 million to cover the refunds we made to campers who we had to cancel because either we weren't open or owing to travel restrictions, they couldn't come. And so in a gesture of goodwill to maintain that clientele,
I
we refunded a lot of money.
I could have figured out a way to make that COVID related and let the feds pay that bill. How come you couldn't?
Well, we tried. I'm with you, Senator. We tried, and you may recall, in appropriations we had 500,000 at first and it was approved for this, and then they scrutinized it and said, no, that's revenue replacement. It's ineligible, and I blew my top. I'm like, if not this, what else? And so anyway, I'm as frustrated as you are, but that's the point, folks, is that it was deemed ineligible. We couldn't use the CRF money for the refunds, so that's why we're coming with budget adjustment, which is really too bad.
No, Julie explained that very well because you had to go someplace. But she did very well explaining that. It is weird though. I mean, the reason you had to refund it is because people couldn't go to the campsites. And why couldn't they go to the campsites? Because of COVID-19. No, that was weird.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
anyhow, yes, give us a little rundown on that.
Sure. Well, also, so we spoke about the $5 million for the forest economy stabilization grants. We had $1.5 million for outdoor recreation businesses. And so we stood up a separate program there, and that all went out the door to a variety of businesses around the state that are particular in the again, they could have made access to other grant programs and support, but we had one earmarked, if you will, for those businesses, which I think was also similarly sent a message that you are a distinct sector, you are important, we value you, and we want to help you. So that was well received. And then so that's the two grant programs out to businesses, forest businesses and recreation businesses. And then we had $1 million of CRF money for state parks in the spring to do PPE for our staff, to make modifications to our facilities for COVID precautions, and then signage, supplies for sanitization, and an astronomical price tag for additional portalets around the state, because we struggled with our bathroom facilities. Well, they weren't open for the first couple months while people were getting out and trying to be healthy. It really was a massive spike in diversification in recreational demand on public lands. And we made them welcome and tried to give good guidance. So we had the original pulse of $1 million to help us plan and set up to operate parks. The state parks was a miracle this year. We didn't think we could operate. We found a way with health department, CDC guidance. We operated at reduced capacity, density of camping at 75%. We limited our offerings, none of our closed facilities, no cabins, no cottages. We just couldn't figure out a reasonable way to mitigate risk and the cleaning and sanitization. And we didn't open until June 26th. So
you couldn't figure out how to clean. If my family went and rented the cabin for 2, 3, 4 days, no way to sanitize it for the next crew?
There was a way. It would just cost an awful lot and take a lot of staff time, or to contract it out. And we just didn't have enough. And we were not sure at all. So we are now in the process of hiring 350 to 400 seasonals, planning, supplying, provisioning, getting ready for another year with the benefit of this last year. So our staff are moving ahead, the professional park staff, with a goal to have full operation this year. We didn't run concessions. We didn't have playgrounds open for most of the summer, all that kind of stuff. It was really limited. Points of contact, points of touch. So we limited it, and it was really difficult. But it ended up being a great year. And we didn't have the 1 million visitors, but we had 750,000 some. We had an increase. Vermonters came out in day use overnight. But what's really bizarre is we had a 20% increase in out-of-state day use visitation. I'm not sure all those people were following the rules, but they paid their way into the parks and had a good time and love Vermont because of it. So we're looking at all that and trying to make a plan to go to full operation and to how can we operate those cabins safely, because they are really popular. And they're also our best kind of moneymaker, their best return. And as baby boomers age, they don't want to sleep on the ground anymore. So again, they're really popular, and we want to be able to use those this year and hoping to build more. Anyway, so that's the original pulse, was just to be able to give us some security and confidence that we could have a safe operating plan. And then it worked really well. Proud of our staff. Everyone should be. it was not easy, by the way. That there's a spectrum of visitors. Some of them, they weren't really into mask wearing or following the out-of-state rules. And imagine yourself being a college kid with a great summer job in Vermont State Parks, having to deal with some hostile person from, I don't know, anybody here from New Jersey? I'll say New Jersey. It was rough, and we may not have some of those people come back. But no infections among our staff or visitors, and just kudos all around. And remember, that's a $90 million in related spending to park visitation in our local economies. It's really important. So we're gearing up to do that again. That's one story. Then we got another pulse, which is about $3 million that we split with Fish and Wildlife. They got a little bit bigger chunk that we used. They used on wildlife management areas. Those are state-owned lands, A&R lands with Fish and Wildlife basis, and our state forests and state parks for a range of recreational access projects, beginning with fixing damage from a spike in public use when we weren't operating. We made the choice to welcome people. We're not open. We're open. We're just not, facilities are not open. They're not staffed, but come use these places. And so there's, lawns got torn up. There wasn't enough parking. There was a variety of impacts. So we focused on those. And then we also have pinch points where trailheads were overcrowded. So we've expanded parking lots around. I've got a slideshow I can show you that show nice pictures. We put contractors to work with that money all over the state doing infrastructure projects on public lands, which I just think is brilliant, frankly. It stimulates an idea of kind of a modern CCC, of a public works, a possibility for economic recovery in the short term by investing in public lands, public works projects on public lands. Think about invasive species control, recreational access, timber stand improvement, aquatic habitat, water quality improvements. There's so many opportunities to invest in public lands that have the short-term benefit of putting these local family contractors to work, with the longer-term benefit of undergirding our recreation and forest economy on public lands as a contributor locally. And we just demonstrated it with $3 million, and our staff were amazing in their ability, with a tight window, to be done by December 30th. We didn't even get started. We weren't even able to get going until September. 38 projects around the state, putting people to work, doing these infrastructure projects, and really exciting people locally, our staff. So again, looking forward with any kind of additional federal relief. I'm really hoping, and I've been working with national level colleagues and the federal delegation on cementing this idea, and I'm super excited about it. And I just say we could look at this as a small Vermont pilot that we just did that with the $3 million. Worked great.
Those are long-term improvements that are done with this federal money. So
right. That will continue to pay benefits. There's health and wellness benefits. There's environmental connectedness when we get people out there, and people love it. And it's part of our brand and our unique competitive advantage in this state. So investing in it just makes all kinds of sense. I'm eager to see that happen. I think that's it. We had about 10 million that, in a variety of ways, grants out to businesses in the two programs, investments in parks, preparedness and precautions, and then this public lands investment. And people, they worked their tails off. They really did.
So are there any questions from any of the committee members? Come on, I mean, we usually harass this guy and you're leaving it all up to me.
Well, I'm always up. What's that, Senator?
I said I think he does a great job.
Well, thank you, Senator.
Yeah, that's good.
I will mention, I hope Linda can correct me. I hope you received, and Senator Hardy's no longer with you in the room. But I know she would be interested. I feel that Senator Pearson was also very interested in our carbon work. So I have delivered written testimony per the miscellaneous ag bill that called on me, hey, come back and keep this thing going. Delivered, I think, an excellent report. I hope you find it helpful. I'm happy to come in and report on that. Probably the biggest thing that we've done that's not in the report is that we hired the state's first ever climate forester on our staff. I got some grant money from American Forests through their climate initiative, convinced them to invest here. And so we brought in Ali Kasiba. She's a PhD from UVM in the Forest Ecosystem Monitoring Program previously. She's brilliant, she's talented. She basically created these documents that we refer to as our outreach that we refer to in the testimony. So there, again, we've added to our strength and ability to help Vermonters understand the threats of climate change, to forests, the possibility of forests being a big part of the solution to climate change, and specifically to guide enrollment in offset programs. So I hope you'll be pleased with our efforts, basically out of nothing, continuing to push it ahead. And we formed a team within the agency to really push forward on where and how and when can we enroll any state lands. So I think we've made real progress even during a pandemic, and I've reported on that. So that's out there for your consideration. I'm happy to come back and discuss it or see where we go from there. But I know that interest, so I wanted to touch on that as well.
Yeah, I think it's very important to, I don't think we Vermonters should allow any carbon credits to be sold to our neighbors to the west to allow them to keep polluting and sending their junk our way. And here we are supplying them with the money to allow that to continue to happen. I'm sorry. Well, we did this. We've already done that with these wind turbines. We stuck them all over our ridge lines, sold the electricity to people south of us, and allowing them to use the wind turbines as credit toward their fossil fuel burning things. And
I remember Senator Pearson first raising this when we just started talking about carbon. So, and you're not alone, either of you, and it's a growing group of folks who are raising this concern, which is why you'll see in the report, testimony, whatever, that I think the most interesting, promising thing we got going now is that, and don't get nervous, that we are working with our neighboring states in kind of a regional approach here to avoid trying to create our own thing here and keep it local. Even though we are working with some other states, some of whom are to our west, but not California. But
that doesn't blow all the way to Vermont. It drops off in Ohio, and then they send us their junk.
That's right. Anyway,
Chris has got a question.
Well, more a comment for you, Senator. I share your concern that it could be set up to be permission to continue to pollute for others. But I think it's really important to recognize that it also is a source of revenue potentially for our foresters, for our forest owners, and even maybe for the state. And that the schemes are always dependent on a decline of pollution. So every program, to my knowledge, of this nature that maybe Vermont could get into is not, hey, just keep it here and start paying for your sins. It's, hey, over time we're ratcheting down, and to the extent that that's tricky, you are allowed to buy a certain percentage of offsets. So that's why I've always been careful as we talk about it to not promise that this alone is reducing emissions, but it is potentially creating some viability, economic viability for our forest owners, which means we face less fragmentation pressure, which in turn means we do a better job of sequestering carbon.
Right.
So it's tricky, and I agree with you, Mr. Chair. There are some risks, but it's not all a one-sided risk. There are real risks to not doing this. And there's a real benefit for us basically getting credit to the work our forest lands have been doing for a long time and translating that into some cash so that we ease the development pressure.
Well, I would rather get the credits to go toward what we are doing that might not be quite up to snuff to offset some of that, so our small businesses don't have to do maybe quite as much revamping to get their carbon usage down. We could use our pluses to help some of the minuses.
That's the idea.
But anyways, anything else, Commissioner?
Well, if you'd indulge, what do you folks call it? A personal privilege? Is that what the official phrase is on the floor?
Point.
Point? Yes, if you would, Mr. Chair, I'd say when everyone's talking about 2020 being so horrible and can't wait to turn the page, I just have to express, because you're a close group. My wife and I had a great year as we adopted this little one.
Yay.
Oh,
And so 2020 is among the best years we could have ever had. So
great.
my life's
That's
changed.
great.
And that's why I had to bail yesterday, because I had a first grader standing in the cold. But huge change and a wonderful thing. I just wanted to share it with you.
Well,
Congratulations.
congratulations. Yeah, that's great. No, and like we said yesterday, family always comes first. So
Appreciate that.
yeah, that's for sure. Is there anything else from any of the members? Any other questions, concerns, things that you'd like the commissioner to look into for a future committee meeting? I'm
Sounds like
sure,
perhaps coming
Commissioner.
back to talk wood energy in the near term, just to see what's going on and what might be possible. Happy to do that. And then the carbon stuff, if you want to keep going there, if you dig into the report, it's dense. There's some dense stuff. Like Senator Pearson said, it's complicated. So we're gonna go after that. We tried to make it accessible and understandable. Don't be afraid of it. There's real good information there, and maybe it helps us continue forward. I'd welcome that. And then the forest economy stuff as possibilities emerge. Keep me posted. You know, I'm always ready and willing, and want to appreciate your interest in all of this stuff sincerely, and appreciate all we've been able to do over the years. This is my 11th year. Can you believe that, as commissioner? It's unbelievable. But let's keep going.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Bobby.
Senator Collmore.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Michael, just don't forget, if we do, and I think we will see another package coming out of Washington, and we're going to have some more funds. Don't forget, if you would, to look at ways in which you think we could change whatever the application is or the provisions therein that would make it easier to reach as many people as we can.
Got it. For sure. We're on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Commissioner, and thanks for all your hard work in this past year. I know it hasn't been easy for any of you folks working at the state level to implement everything, but we certainly appreciate that, and it's always a pleasure to have you in and work with you. So take care, and if we can help in any way, feel free to contact us anytime.
Thank you very much, Senator Starr, and all of you. Great to visit with you again. I look forward to more. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. So committee, next week's schedule, I don't know if Linda probably hasn't sent that out. Linda, are you on?
Yes.
You want to run quickly through that, just to give the committee a heads up?
Sure. On Tuesday, we're trying to get in some of the farmers from the Farmers Watershed Alliance in the northwest part of the state. And then the governor's address is in the afternoon, budget address. On Wednesday, there's a little follow-up on food security at 9, and then at 10 o'clock, the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative is having a joint session with you and House Ag that will last till, for the rest of the morning. On Thursday, the Gund Institute will hopefully be here at 9, and then at 10 o'clock, there's the hearing with Michael Pichak on the Vermont Dairy Industry Price Regulations document. If any of you want me to send that to you, I will. And then Friday, possibly committee discussion on the milk processing. That looks like it for now.
Yeah, and I thought Friday we could talk a little bit more about our food security stuff and if we need to hear from anyone else before we start, thinking about putting pieces together to help keep that up and alive and well into the future. So, and if there's anything or anyone that any of you would like to get on the schedule, again, let us know, Linda and I, and just call Linda. That would be good too.
Have we connected with Corey's milk bottling person?
We have.
No, I've still got to send the contact to Linda.
Because I'm really curious to talk with what they have to say.
We haven't contacted them yet, but I think Linda's onto that and getting contact information and all that. A couple of more things. I thought the meeting was very well. The federal people explained things quite well, and I think it's important that we stay on top of what they're doing, and that that meals nutrition stuff that they talked about it's really big dollars to our folks and so important for our young children and people. So hopefully, I don't know what Brian, what Ed is doing. Hopefully they're getting the same reports if they're having the feds in that we're getting to help on school nutrition and things. But if not, we should work with those guys, Brian and his crew.
Brian
And
Campion.
pardon?
Brian Campion, you mean?
No, I was thinking of you. No.
I saw Chris going, huh? So because he's chairing education.
Yeah, we could have the B&B nutrition program.
There you go.
Yeah.
But I think it's critical that we stay on target and get that done. So if you find that we're getting off the rails, don't be afraid to tell me. So I guess we'll have a few minutes off, and Corey.
I was gonna say, Bobby, I know there's not much we can do to push the feds. I know we had a conversation today, but would it be worth our committee sending them a letter or doing something that maybe we hold a vote on just to show them support for some of this stuff? And that we have bipartisan support here for it?
Well,
Done that, haven't we? Didn't we do that last year?
I think, Linda, do you recall? I thought we sent them a letter. Do you recall?
I think we did, but I can check on that.
Yeah, and so we can we could do that. They know that we always have bipartisan report in our bipartisan legislation in ag. We keep working on it until it is bipartisan. And I think most of the committees are good in Vermont, we're good at trying to make sure everybody feels comfortable with issues before we go too far. Yeah, we'll check into that, Corey.
Okay.
Is there anything else that we need chat about for the week or next week?
are we, we're going to be in February before we know it. Are we, are you checking in, Mr. Chair, with Jim Demarez about the incentive school lunch bill?
Well, I sent him everything to get going on it. I'll see. Michael would usually do that. He'd keep tabs on it and push those guys. It's a bummer not having Michael with us, but that's the family issue. It's very important that he take care of that issue. But I'll call. Well, hey Linda, would you want to check with the council to see what's going on with that?
I'll do that.
Okay. I hate to lean on Linda too hard. She has 2 jobs already going.
She's more than able. And I just think even if we don't advance the actual bill, I bet we could tuck some provisions of it into the food work that's going to happen. And, the report from New York yesterday was incredible, right? There's a lot of schools getting 30. What did she say? One school is 60% local.
Yeah.
I mean, they must live next to the Nabisco factory or something, but still, I mean, there's truly the idea that we could make sure people have food and, be driving a lot of that money to float around our economy. Very exciting and not an opportunity I want to miss if we have it at all.
Just think if we had a little manufacturing place where the farmers could take their product, have it bagged properly and all this, and shipped right to the schools. How that would put more people to work, and no, it would be great. We need some manufacturing and more people at that.
Well, and in New York, they were saying this is driving market. So
Sure.
There's the facility in Hardwick that potentially could process some of these foods. There's some of those food hubs. If suddenly a couple of businesses knew that we were going to reliably do this, they're definitely going to respond. And anyway, I'd much rather make sure our money goes there than just here's some money to feed people for the next 6 months. Vermont Eats, everybody's celebrating that. It's a great program because it hits several of these goals, and I just don't want us to miss that opportunity if we can help it.
Yeah. And our food residual bill, I got a note from Heather Schuldeis last night saying that in Williston, Vermont, Casella has got a dewrapping processing machine where you can send your outdated products and it'll take the plastic off, unwrap it, and I don't know where that end product is going, but that would be good for composting and soil health and all that. So I set it up so Linda would contact Heather, and if we get some dead time where we can plug her in to our committee, we'll have Heather in to hear more about that DRAP outfit that the Casella's got set up. So I guess if that's it, we'll call it a week, and thanks a lot for everything, and I think we had a good week.